Hello, welcome back to GOT. As promised, we're going to get right back into it with the Oppo Find N6 versus the OnePlus Open. Let's get right into the nighttime photography. Let's go. Let's go ahead and look at some night shots. Okay, here we are at nighttime on both of them. Check this out. You've got a night shot here. I'm using the ultra wide, and they both kind of flare the light the same. There's not much change. They look pretty much the same. Is the Oppo Find N6 any brighter? It has a 1.8 versus a 1.7, so no, not really. And what's interesting about these two is you got a little more light here in the Oppo Find N6. I'm not quite sure why, but you can see the fence is lighting up, and you can see a little more of the trunk. But as far as the clarity, I think they're pretty much the same. Let's go in one on this. Now, this is a 3 times on both of them. And as you can see, they're both about the same. I don't know if one is clearer than the other. If we go a couple clicks in, let's see what happens. They both kind of blur. Neither one of them do really well at night. And I never found the OnePlus Open to do extremely well at night either. So they're about the same. Off in the distance, you can see it really begins to blur a bit. And we'll prove it by zooming in just a little bit more here on the next one. You can see here now, what I do like is you can actually see the lamp now, but it looks like it's doing a better job on the OnePlus Open, allowing the design of the lamp to show through, where you get a little more glare here, which is interesting since the f-stop is lower here, allowing more light on the OnePlus. So that's real interesting. But of course, the Oppo is allowing more light in with the ISO setting, so that's probably why it's actually a little more blur as well. The higher the ISO, the more blurry your picture is going to get, because it's putting a lot of fake artificial light in the background. And so that's not always a good thing. You want a lower ISO. So let's go ahead and go to the next photo here at night. And this one's zooming in times 10. And look what happened. I don't know what happened to the Oppo Find N6. I took this shot more than once, and it came out the same. This is the best one out of them all. I don't know what happened. It just kind of fell apart at this range. I took a closer look at this after recording, and what I found is that that's the 200 megapixel lens that took this photo. You know, you could see here by the 1.7 f-stop, that's the specs of the zoom or the 200 megapixel lens, not the zoom lens. The zoom lens would be 2.7 f-stop. So it does not do a very good job zooming in at night with the 200 megapixel lens. Let's go to the next image here. This is 20 times on both of them. And you can see here, lines are a little straighter on the Find N6, you know, on the blinds, but is it clearer? The house is more of a blue. This is giving it a yellow tint. So I think you got a more accurate color here on the OnePlus than you do the N6. So if you're getting these for nights, you know, you want a little more light around. So let's talk about that 200 main shooter on the Oppo Find N6. It's very similar to that of the Z Fold 7 and of course the Ultras, where it's got the 200 megapixel main shooter. Doesn't do really much for me. You know, you take the point and click shot, point and shoot, whatever. That's what you're going to get. You're going to get 200 megapixel photo downplayed to 12 megapixels. And we're not going to use the 200 megapixel camera on this for anything really than just point and click. So let's go ahead and look at a 200 megapixel versus a 12 megapixel point and shoot on this phone. But first, I want to show you what you have to do in order to get a 200 megapixel shot on this phone. Check this out. So go ahead and play this, and you can see in order to get it to the 200 megapixel, you got to go to the Hasselblad high res page or lens or software portion. That's how you, and check this out. You take the shot and you have to wait. It takes it a long time to process. That is ridiculous. You know, you snap the picture and you have to wait for it to process. That's crazy. Now, you can go down to 50 megapixel, and all you do is select the button that says 200, and it switches to 50. Now, notice here the 50 megapixel has all the zoom ranges. You don't on the 200 megapixel. You just have the 1 times because it's not a zoom lens. It's kind of wasteful. And you have the 3 times zoom on the 50 megapixel, which, you know, why use anything else? So why do you need a 200 megapixel lens? If you take a 50 megapixel shot, watch this, it goes a lot faster. You just point, click, and it's there. Okay. And that's the same thing you get on these other phones. Well, these other phones, you just point and shoot and you get that 50 megapixel image. Now, when you do it in the Hasselblad high resolution setting, you do get a higher pixel count or resolution picture, and you can tell that by the file size. Check this out. Okay, now I have here side by side on the screen. You can see it's using the same lens here, and the settings are pretty much the same as far as ISO, the range, 23 millimeters, 1.8. But this one right here on the left is the 200 megapixel camera setting here using that Hasselblad software. Okay, so this is the 200 megapixel. This over here, and we know that by the file size. Check out this file size, 1600 by 1400 something, and 58 megapixels in size. Over here, this one's not quite so much. What is this one? This one is 24 megapixels. This one is 8000 by 7000. So this is the 50 megapixel shot right here. Okay. And then over here, we've got the 12 megapixel bending down. So now they're all using the same 200 megapixel lens. It's just the processing is different, saving more pixels in the 200 megapixel versus the 50, and then bending it down to 12. So here on the right now is the 12 bending photo. So let's go ahead and close this out, and then we'll zoom in on both, and you tell me what the difference is. So you close that. So this is the same shot, and we'll go ahead and zoom in here quite a bit. Let's zoom in, and let's look at, I want to look at this bush here and these flowers. So let's go ahead and do the same thing. We'll zoom in. You can actually zoom in closer because it is a much larger image. But let me see here. Let's bring this down to the same size. What do you see? What's the difference between the two? 200 megapixel image, huge file size on the left. Over here, bended down 12 megapixels on the right. You can see all the same detail, really. There's not a whole lot. Let's go ahead and zoom in. It's a little bit further here. Okay, now you get a little more blur, but you know what? You get the same thing here. Okay, you could zoom in a little closer on a 200 megapixel, but it's all blurred. All right, what's the difference? There's a little bit more clarity here, not enough. This is bending down. And if we go to the 50 megapixel image, do the same thing, okay, you get just a little bit more. So are you really getting a deal with that 200 megapixel lens? I say no. Where it makes a difference is in the zoom. And if you want to see that difference, go check out one of my other videos with the Honor Magic, 8 Pro and the Vivo X300 Pro. You will see the huge difference. I took photos of the same place using those zooms. It's incredible. So to wrap that all up about the camera, what is Mark saying? Well, I'm saying the 200 megapixel lens, just like it is on the Samsung phones, is a gimmick. It really is a gimmick. You can do the same thing with the 50 megapixel lens. I'm just not buying into that 200 megapixels with the small sensors on any of those phones. All right, let's go ahead and move on to selfies real quick. This is a little different story. Check this out. You look at both of them and you can see that they are both the 23 and 24 millimeters, the same shot. This is just your standard one-time zoom. And I don't know, I like the OnePlus Open a little better. Of course, the Oppo is a little brighter, which is just kind of strange with the f-stop. And then when we go into 3 times, they're both it's a lot better. Okay, it's a lot better on the Oppo Find N6. But they're both pretty much equal. This has to be a personal preference. And then this is the selfie camera. The selfie camera didn't do too well with the sun at my back on either one of them. I don't really care for either one of them. And then I went ahead and got it in the shade and did them both here with a straightforward. And look at this crazy artifacting that the Oppo Find N did at the top here. I don't quite understand that. I prefer, of course, the OnePlus Open on this one because it didn't have any issues. It took the shot really clear, and I'm in the shade on both of them, so I'm not quite sure what's going on. Pretty strange there on the selfies. I'm not quite sure why one did better than the other, but you know. Now let's take a quick look at the screen brightness since I'm outside, because I know that's a question for each of you. So let's take a look. Okay, now on both of these, you're supposed to have 3600 nits brightness on the Oppo Find N6 and only 28 on the OnePlus Open. Can you see the difference between 36 and 28? I don't know that it's there. And on the external screen, it's actually less on the Oppo Find N. It's supposed to be 2500 nits. So I'm not really seeing any difference on either screen in this comparison. This is in direct sunlight on both of them. It's about the same brightness. Performance, we have the new 8 Gen 5 Elite or Elite 5, whatever we call it, in the Oppo Find N6, and you have a Snapdragon Gen 2 in the OnePlus Open. Let's check out the performance. So as you can see here, I got a video where I actually run the test. I render a video that's 10 minutes long on all of them just to test them out to see how they do. And as you can see, they all get started pretty good. And then you've got the OnePlus, the 8 Gen on the right, Oppo Find N in the middle, and then the Honor 8 Pro on the right. And the reason why I put that one in there, because I wanted to see how an 8-core would perform against a 7-core. And as you can see, it actually did better. It did it in 4 minutes and 14 seconds. Right behind that was the OnePlus Open. And then you've got the Honor, which with the 5 Elite 8, 5-core, 8-core, the one that's got everything in it, taking longer than the rest. This is crazy, folks. It was barely outperformed a 3-generation chip, okay? Old chip, that is, versus the new one. It barely performed. Why is this going on? And especially the 8-core in the Honor Magic 8 Pro. Well, what I figure is it's because they throttle it. They throttle the newer chips so these things don't overheat. They're too much chip probably for the device because they had to go thin with these things, you know, so we lost performance out of them. Now, supposedly they throttle them on purpose so that gameplay works better and you don't have to worry about them overheating and the device getting hot. You know, I'm not a big game player, so it doesn't really matter to me, but I believe that that's the purpose for the throttling. But if you do stuff like me, where I like to render a lot of videos on these things, especially if you do shorts and such, I like it to be faster. And at least they did improve it a little bit here on the Oppo Find N6, having that 7-core. You can see it's not handicapping it from the 8-core. And I can tell you, I had the S26 Ultra and the S26 Plus, and I also tested those in another video, and they were outperformed by the older phones. So this is not something that's unique to Honor or Oppo. It's just the way the 5 Gen Elite chip is set up to help keep it cool. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the scores here on the benchmark. So looking at the Geekbench here, Geekbench, you can see that the OnePlus Open scored the lowest, which it should, but not much behind on multi-car from the Oppo Find N6. Look at that. That's really close. And as far as the Honor Magic 8 Pro with the 7th core, multitasking is nearly double. I mean, that's crazy that the multitasking score is so high. But these tell us that you can't trust benchmarks, not on paper, as far as the way these things perform. I mean, you can do the additional 3D mark test and all that, where it's stress testing them all, but that really doesn't tell you a whole lot. It's actual performance for me that really tells the story. Let's move on to sound. I know everybody's interested in how these things sound, because this one has 3 speakers, 2 up front, 1 on the bottom or up top, and then this one has 1 on each side. So let's check it out. We'll first start with, let's go with the new one. Let's try this. 6. Yes, there was a Find N5. I didn't get that one. We have the Find N6 now. Let's check it out. So as you know, the OnePlus Open is, I guess, 2 generations removed from the N6 now. Let's check it out. So as you know, the OnePlus Open is, I guess, 2 generations removed from the Find N6 now, because they had the Find N5, now the Find N6. Of course, wow, it's a lot louder on the OnePlus Open. Let's go one more time, and you can see the difference. They're sister companies, that is. So pretty much the same phone, although the OS is a little bit different. as far as Find N6 now, but I think they're pretty much Find N5, now the Find N6. Of course, they're sister companies, so pretty much the same phone, although so I gotta say, although the OnePlus Open is louder and has that third speaker, it's not necessarily better. I think they're both really about the same. I don't know if there's more bass. OS is a little bit different. Same. So let's go ahead and open this thing up, and no, there's no more bass in the Oppo Find N6. It's just this one is just louder, and the sound is pretty much the same. So at least it doesn't sound tinny in the Oppo Find N6. So I think you'd be happy with either one as far as the sound goes. But me personally, I use headsets or earbuds, so that really doesn't affect me all that much. Now, if you're like me, you wonder about battery life. How is battery life? You have the OnePlus Open, which has the 4805, I think, something like that, battery, and you have the 6,000 milliamp hour battery in the Oppo Find N6. I think undoubtedly the Oppo Find N6 is going to run a lot faster, but when it comes to charging, it's going to charge faster. However, the OnePlus Open will get full faster because it's not quite as large a battery. You got 66 watt charging on the, or 67, I guess it is, on the OnePlus Open, and you got 80 watt wired charging on the Oppo Find N6. Now, the problem with the OnePlus Open, it does not have wireless charging. Yeah, no wireless charging, no MagSafe on either one of them, which is a disappointment. I wish they'd at least put that MagSafe or something similar to that on the OnePlus, on the Oppo Find N6, but none of the Chinese manufacturers have done it yet, so that hasn't really put them behind it all. Neither has Samsung. The only one that has is Pixel. But as far as battery use, they'll both do really good. I started testing these things 3 days ago. I have not plugged either one of them up to a charger. You have 19% still on the Oppo Find N6 and 12% on the OnePlus Open. Now, I'll be honest with you, I did use the Oppo Find N6 a little more. So, as far as battery life goes, it's really doing well. Now, I'm not one of those that looks at the screen on time and all that garbage, because for me, what matters is how often do I have to put it on a charger. And with these, I went through photo shots, screen recordings, and you saw I ran those tests on these things, and they still have some battery left. They're ready to be plugged in, but they still have the battery left. Now, in my previous video, I did something on multitasking and showed you the difference, but there's one thing that was corrected by some of my audience, which I really appreciate, is you can get the 3 side-by-side on the OnePlus Open. Check that out. Here's 2 apps. Open will do the same thing here. 2 apps open, and you can pull out a third app right here now, and I can actually add it right here. 3 in a row, you can see. Now they're all 3 up here. What it was is there was a setting inside the settings that I had to switch on to allow it to resize all the apps so that this would work. So you can get it here. Same as here. You can get the same thing. Take this and drop it. So they are pretty much identical. And then, of course, here you can take and you can expand one, and it'll be on the bottom, and the other 2 will be up top, as you can see here. And you can do the exact same thing here. You take the dots and you can expand this one. So you've got these and these up here. Now it's time to hear from you. What'd you think about this review? I know it was long and it was 2 parts, but we've got it all done now. Is there anything I missed? Go ahead and let me know down in the comments. I'd appreciate it. Does this convince you one way or the other? Do you upgrade to the Oppo Find N6 if you have the OnePlus Open, or do you keep it and wait for another version? I want to hear from you. One last thought is I do want to say, with the Oppo Find N6, at least you do have at least 5 updates, where the OnePlus Open, I believe, is pretty much finished. It might have one more, but I think it's finished as of this year. So you've got updates coming to the Oppo Find N6. OnePlus Open is pretty much over. And that said, I do believe that both of them need some updates on the camera software, which I'm sure they're going to do here in the next few months, especially when they really start seeing some of the reviews on these cameras. Now, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because I have a lot more content to come. And if you missed the first part of this series, check out the video here. Next to come is going to be the Oppo versus the Honor Magic. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and God bless.